And Susan, you're welcome to start.
Not worry about, you just unmuted me?
Yes, you're ready to start.
Okay. Um, good morning. It's good to be able to teach this class without having to worry about social distancing. I guess we're doing the best we can at this point. So what I'm going to talk about is how to get your garden started this spring and how to plan for it. So when you look at the garden, you'll see a lot more gardens that look like E4. We've spent a good winter building more boxes. And G4 is a non-raised bed. And we're going to talk about how, if you want to raise your bed, how to do that and what to do after that. Okay. My slideshow doesn't want to move. Okay. So why to raise or not to raise the garden? That's the question. And the pros is it makes the most of your soil. One of the gardens that we put a box around this year was so tiny that it wasn't the 6 feet wide, but it was really, really tall in the amount of soil that they had. So they didn't have full use of their garden. And by putting amendments in it, you improve the drainage, you prevent soil compaction as long as you're not stepping all over it, and then you prevent soil erosion. A lot of times what happens on these gardens that aren't built up is you put all your amendments on and then they disappear into the sides of your garden, into the walkways. And your soil temperatures are warmer earlier, so that means you can plant better and sooner. The cons is building the box. It is costly if you buy your product not using the cull box at Home Depot, where you can get 70% off the actual building of the box, but there's a group of us that have done it over the winter that will help you do it. And the biggest thing is filling that box with amended soil, because the bigger the box, the more soil and stuff you're going to have to put in it. So make your choice before you start amending the soil, because you don't want to move the soil more than once. And so your garden should measure 6 feet wide by 25 feet long. The space between the gardens should be 3 feet. And we found that over the years, the non-raised gardens have spread and encroached on the walkways and things. So you may have to move your garden one way or the other, and it may be too long or too wide, too skinny, but we'll help. And we can put a sign-up sheet in the shack if somebody wants our help, or if you just want our opinion on what to do with your existing box and how to make it better if it's starting to fall apart. So you want to choose your materials. You'll see a lot of different materials out there, and what we found to be the best is non-pressure treated material. And you want 2x6s, 2x8s, 2x10s, or 2x12s. You can't have a raised garden greater than 12 inches, and that 12 inches has to be from the actual ground up, not from where the walkways are. And remember, the higher your sides, the more soil to move. Most of what we've built are 2x6s. We got a great deal on some 2x8s, so we did some 2x8s this year. But just remember that when you start looking at it. You'll need a couple of 6-foot long pieces for the ends and a combination of lengths for the sides to make 25 feet. And we have a style that we have started building that we think works really good. You put your 6-foot end piece in, and then you see that we have 4x4 squares in those corners that are not on the water line. And then the other end doesn't have those posts because those posts are dug into the ground. On the other end where your water line is, we just put angle brackets. And the thing that we really need to make sure people are aware of is please don't dig around those water lines because they're fragile and they break. And if they break, then we have to get the water team to come in and fix them. So we want the long ends to butt up against the shorter ends so that your garden is 72 inches by 25 feet on the outside. And then to hold your pieces together along the side, we recommend putting a 1-inch or a 1-foot piece of board between your splices. And then once you get your box all built, if you measure in 8 feet from each end and put a rebar in, that will keep your box from moving and having middle-age spread. Now what do? We amend. So the gardens are on crushed granite, and over the last 8 years, we have amended the soils, but we still keep doing it year after year after year because we use some of the amendments up as we garden. You can use the amendments that are at the back of the garden, or you can purchase your favorite amendments, whatever you like, as long as they're organic. So first, to see what you might need is you put your soil in a container with water about 5 to 1 and shake it up and let it sit. And what rises to the top should be how much organic matter you have. So on the left is the before picture, and before I added anything. This was 2 years ago. And then the one on the right is after I added a bunch of stuff. And you can still see that I don't have a third of my garden soil being organic. And what I just did this morning from Thursday when I was at the garden, even after I added as much as I added last year, I have barely anything sitting on the top. So guess what? Manure pile, here I come. So in the back are these areas that we have free manure, and you are able to get whatever you want from there. My suggestion is that you don't pick the biggest wheelbarrow and fill it full, especially if you're up in the front like I am, and try to fill your garden with trips to the manure pile because it gets really tiring. So I've learned to take smaller loads and just do more loads. Some people, if you look, there's a screen leaning against one of the piles. Some people do screen for all the sticks and things before they take it down. So there are plenty of screens if that's what you want to do.
Susan?
Yes.
Are all the piles in the back manure piles, or are there different types of piles in the back?
This year, they're all manure piles. We did have one of the black gold, but it's pretty much gone now. So it's my understanding that everything that's back there is horse manure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So once you have figured out what your amendments need to be, then if you haven't already done this, Glenn McComb from Plant Fair Nursery has been good enough to give us all these soil tester kits so that we know exactly what we have to put into our gardens. And what we're trying to do is see what the garden overall looks like. So you will get, when you get this test kit, you will also get a form to get back to the shack. And it's easy to do, and it will help us know what to give you as ideas and recommendations as to what to use to feed your garden when these different items are low. So when you choose amendments, look for this emblem, because we want everything to be guaranteed organic. And if you have something that you think is organic but you're not sure, ask, and we'll do some research and find out, because we really want to keep this garden organic as much as possible. So one of the things that's confusing to some people is the difference between compost and mulch. Compost, for those of you that have been gardeners for a while, is the black gold compost that Glenn has always brought in over the past years. And it's full of amendments, full of nutrition, it's organic material. And this is what you mix in with the soil in your garden, because you want it to get your soil to, so that the water drains properly and that you have a place for the roots to go. Mulch, on the other hand, can be inorganic as well as organic. It can be paper, it can be weed cloth, straw, leaves, it can be just about anything. We do not recommend the inorganic because we're not sure what leaches into the soil. But whatever you use, you want to lay it on top of your garden after you've planted, 3 to 4 inches thick. That will prevent the weeds from coming up. And as Carol and I and several other people know, weeding is not fun. We spent Thursday doing that. And it maintains your moisture so we don't lose as much water to the air as we do when gardens don't have mulch on them. So we really, really want you guys to consider putting 3 to 4 inches of some type of organic mulch on your garden. I used wood chips from I forgot the name of the store, but anyway, Tractor Supply. And people are worried that it takes away your nitrogen, but it only takes it away on the very top layer of the soil. Everything that's underneath still has your nitrogen, so you don't have to worry about the wood chips taking the nitrogen away. And when we put it on our sweet potato garden last year, it prevented the sweet potato from making new roots on top from the vines and stuff, so that all the energy went down to our potatoes. So it worked really well on that. So the northwest corner of our garden is the store. And this is last year's picture, and there's all kinds of stuff back there. Feel free to add to the pile of stuff that you aren't using this year and aren't going to use, so that other gardeners can use them. And also take what you need and use it. That's what it's there for. Everything that's in the store in the back of the garden is for free. Anything that's up along the west fence towards where the dome is garden property that we use on our food bank gardens. And depending on how much Carol has, you may be able to borrow some of that from her. So just check with the staff to see what we have around that you can use. There are plenty of wagons and tools, not to mention the hand tools that are up at the shack. The purple tools are up in the front, and there's a yellow set down at the north end of the garden. And we do ask that you wear gloves when you're handling the equipment. Most of us do, just because we're working in the garden. And even though it does have labels on there, where things go, you don't have to put it back where the label goes, because there's not a lot of reason to sit there searching for the specific place that you took your tool out of. So use them, and if you want to use your own tools, that's okay too. So Leo has a team that will till your garden if you want it tilled. He started last week, and there'll be a sign up at the shack, and he'll do it usually once a week. But the important thing is your amendments have to be in place. And they have to be spread out. You don't want just piles of it there, because he can't get the tiller to go through it. And you want to make sure there's nothing else in your garden. You don't want plants, you don't want rocks, you don't want tools or your watering system, because he can't take those out, till, and then put them back in. So make sure your garden is clear. If you do have plants, like I had one corner of my garden that had plants in it, but the rest of it needed to be tilled, I just went and got some of the flags that are available and marked off where I didn't want him to till, and he just tilled around it. So that works really well. So if you want it, sign up and he will get it done. I think he can do between 8 and 10 gardens at a time if he's just doing it himself. If he's got more help, he can do more. So now we're to planning your garden. And I keep asking everybody, do I really need a plan? And if you talk to Carol, she says yes. If you talk to some other people, they say yes. I've got one lady that has spreadsheets at home, figuring out how she's going to plan her garden. For me, I'm hoping this year I'll be better than I was last year or the year before. I tend to go to the store and see something that I like. I buy it and I plant it in the garden. And that's all good and fine. I get good produce, but the problem is without a plan, you run the risk of not being able to get to all your plants, or like I did the first year, a lot of my plants didn't do well because they were shaded by the bigger plants, and I didn't think about all those things when I started my garden. So there are different ways. There's graph paper that you can just purchase and do a garden plan, or just build your plan on a plain piece of paper. There's interactive plans that you can do. But if you do plan your garden, you'll be able to keep the weeds down a little bit better, get to them. You'll keep the bugs down, because my bugs tend to jump from plant to plant without any trouble, because I plant them too close together. So a plan is a good thing. One of the gardeners marks off her boards in probably 1 to 2 feet, and then run strings across her garden so that she has 1 foot squares, or whatever her dimension is. And that's a good way to know that you're spacing your plants well. So what is your plan? Our garden has 3 seasons. We're in the spring garden now that are cool weather crops. We can do a summer garden, which a lot of people wait and do, and then we have the winter garden. And I was going to put a picture of the handout in here, but the ones that I took from the garden, I forgot and left them there. And the ones I have at home, I've written all over. So what you want to look for is when to plant your vegetables. This is a list of vegetables with what temperature to plant in, what season to plant. It also tells you what is best planted from seed and what is best planted from transplant. And on the back side of it, it has companion planting so that you know what to plant next to each other so that they'll be encouraged to grow, and what not to plant next to certain things, and also when to harvest. So that is at the shack that you can get. The other thing that we want you to think about is if you're using seeds, which we probably will have to do a lot of this year, you want to use seeds that have some immunity to disease. So make sure you look on the plant, the seed packet, and see what they're immune to. We kind of discourage heirloom varieties because they don't always do well. They are not disease resistant because they haven't been bred to be that way. I have found a couple that works, but when you really look across the garden, you'll see that everybody is using a lot of the resistant plants. Payson is in zone 6 and 7. And so April just sent a message through. We're not as cold as some of the areas, and we're not as hot as some of the areas. So what allows us to have the 3 gardening sessions. So I don't know what else I can tell you about that, April. So go ahead and type in again and I'll come back to it. We also have a handout that's called The Most Successful Vegetable Plants in the Payson Community Garden. And it tells the actual brand of plant that works well in our gardens. It tells you about the packaging codes, and then there's a list of proven performers. So again, we can have those at the shack for you to pick up. The dates for the 3, as soon as I find it, I can tell you. The spring is from March to May. We usually do summer gardening starting in after Mother's Day, and then we start the winters. The handouts, they should be there. I will get more copies and bring them when I come down, so you shouldn't have any problem with that. So things to consider for your spring garden. You want cold hardy plants that you can plant now, and they're the ones that thrive in soil temperatures of 40 to 50 degrees. You plant now, harvest in May, and when you start your summer garden, make sure you pull out all your spring plants because they tend to invite aphids and different insects like that to harbor inside the old plants, and you don't want them on your new ones. The things that you want to plant are things like onions, beets, chives, garlic, carrots, cauliflower, broccoli, anything that likes the colder weather. The summer garden is where most people plant their biggest gardens. And these are the warm season veggies, your tomatoes, your lettuces, things like that that want to be warm. And this is our longest season. It's 160 days long. What you need to take into consideration is some of the plants, because we do have a late frost. Last year it snowed on Mother's Day, so everything was about a month off. You'll want to cover your seedlings and your seeds with some type of a frost cover to give them that warmth greenhouse-y feel that they need to come up. And in some months, you may consider putting a sunscreen over the top, and you don't want to use anything that's greater than 25% or your plants won't get enough sunscreen. If you put plant supports up, if you look around the garden, you'll see different things. You'll see PVC pipe that has been bent over. You'll see metal structures. You'll see all kinds of different ways to grow your plants upright. Just remember, those can't be higher than 5 feet because you don't want to shade your neighbor's garden. If you do put them in, you want to consider that if you have plants that are really sensitive to the sun, put your taller plants next to those so that the the afternoon sun doesn't get to them. One thing for sure is the tomato cages that you get at the big box stores are not sturdy enough for our tomatoes because of the winds that we get in our garden. So you want to build your own sturdier tomato cages, and usually what people are using are the concrete wire that you can get in over at the big box store and roll it in a circle and put it together and then put it up on stakes. Whatever you do, you want to make sure that everything is sturdy in the ground so it doesn't get blown over, and your tomatoes that you work so hard for, the stems break and then you don't have tomatoes. The regular tomato cages are good for peppers, so if you have some, don't throw them away, use them for your peppers. The third garden season is the winter garden. And again, it's your cold, hardy plants, and you may want to cover them when towards the later end of the season so that they don't get burnt by the frost. And usually our first frost comes around October 20th-ish. But you can still harvest till the end of November. We don't close the garden until December, so you can, August to November is when you can get your winter plants going. Okay, Jerry, we will start the watering system usually with the summer gardens. And the reason for that is because right now we have 22 gardens that have been planted, and so that we're not wasting water, it's easier to hand water the smaller amounts of plants. So the purple, I believe they're going to start turning on the purple faucets, but for sure the red or maroon garden farmers faucets are on, and you can fill your water containers from there. So they won't start for sure until they get the water class out and they can make sure everybody knows what they need to do to put your watering system in. Okay, so here are some of the different structures that you can see and some of the different covers. Everybody has a different idea. There's also the watering system where the garden is divided into thirds and they've cut holes in the cross beams and put their watering system through there. So you can pretty much do what you want to do as long as you don't use watering systems that bubble up or spray around. They really want you to use soaker hoses and different things like that. The other thing that you see around these gardens is wood chips. And if you've been in the garden since we opened, you'll see there's wood chips. So make your job easier of weeding the walkways between your gardens. Put some more wood chips down and keep them from growing up. So I've already gone a half an hour on this kind of stuff. I've got a few more slides that I can go through. Do you want to stay on and get it all, or what would you like to do? Okay. Okay. So there's different ways of planning and planting your garden. And one thing that some people are very good at, and this is one thing I'm not, is if you want to extend your growing season, you can stagger your planting times. Like for lettuce, plant a row of lettuce, a couple of weeks later plant another row of lettuce, and then that way when your first row is done producing, you'll have your second one. So you have now 4 weeks worth of a single crop. Or you can do lettuce, and as soon as that's done and you don't want any more, then you can plant a different crop right after that one is harvested. So pull it out of the ground, put another one right in, so that you don't have blank spots in your garden. You're always growing what you want. So if you have something really special that you like to eat, go ahead and stagger those planting times. And then one thing you're going to find out about our garden is that you can't always plant according to the seed, because if you do the math, you don't have enough room to put in as many plants as you would like to put in. So we talk about a few different types of planting strategies. The first one is intensive, and this is an extreme form of companion planting. So if you can imagine planting corn, and right around your corn, you plant pole beans. And so as the corn grows, the stalk of the corn supports the beans so that they're right there. You don't have to have another support system in there. Some people do this. I haven't seen a lot of it, but if you talk to people, there are certain strategies like that. A lot of information online that you can find about intensive gardening planting. Another one that's interesting is square foot gardening. And what it does is you divide your garden up into square foot plots, and then you read how many plants that you can put in that 1 foot area. Like tomatoes, you could put 1 in each square. And some of the other plants, you can put up to 12 different plants in there and it will be fine. It's space saving and you get a lot more out of it. But some of the things you need to think about is for the tomatoes to grow like that, you really have to be diligent about pulling off the suckers that grow. But for other things like radishes and beets and all of that, you know, you can get more out of a square foot plot than what the planting guides say. And then again, there's the normal way of following the seed packets, but you will have to do a little bit smaller number of plants or decrease the spacing to fit your garden. The other thing that we want in these gardens are plant pollinators. And so we want flowers like marigolds or nasturtiums, herbs, anything that will attract the bees. You'll see a couple of bee houses around the garden where we're trying to attract the bees so that they will pollinate your garden. But that being said, we want to make sure that you don't plant things that will be invasive or that are not good for the garden. And one of the things that I can tell you that if I never see another mint plant that I have to dig out of a garden, I'll be happy. We spent a lot of time last fall digging mint out pathways, and once it gets in there, it's really hard to get rid of. The same thing with asparagus. There's a lot of asparagus planted in the gardens and it's yummy, but you do need to be mindful that it is invasive. We don't want tall fruit plants. We don't want vining plants. You know, we want things that you can grow and take out and let your garden rest and then start over again in the next year for the most part. So to recap what we just went through, we want you to think about building or revising garden boxes. If you want help, you want advice, Carol and I and Leo, Margaret, Kathy are all there to help. And if you don't know who we are, just ask at the shack, they'll point us out. I'm up in R1 in the front of the garden, and I always wear a distinctive green hat. So you could always come and ask me about what you need, and then we can help you fix your gardens. So we want you to amend your soil. There's with steer manure, with soil, with organic fertilizers, whatever you need to get that garden in its best shape to give you the best produce that you can get out of it. If you want your garden tilled, sign up at the shack, but make sure you have all your amendments spread out and then we can run the tiller through it for you. And make new friends, ask questions. Some of you are more knowledgeable gardeners than some of the rest of us. This is only my third year. So share your knowledge with us. If something works for you, let us know. And most of all, have fun. Any more questions?
Yeah, there were a couple of questions that came up. April was asking, does this mean no perennials? Can we get the same plot next year?
Okay, it does not mean no perennials. I think at the very beginning they were thinking no, but if you look around, you'll find a lot of gardens that have perennials in them, and that's okay. And yes, you can get your same plot next year around the end of the year. We start asking people to let us know whether they want to keep their garden plots. And so we give them their garden plot right back. So you've done all the hard work. There's no use starting over in another one.
And
And
Suzanne,
then,
what are the
uh-huh,
what are the current hours and days for the garden now?
okay. Saturday, 8 to 5, Monday and Thursday evenings, 3 to 6. And what we're asking for the precautions based on CDC recommendations are that you maintain your social distancing. We put up a piece of tape so that when you're coming in to sign in, you can tell the monitor your name and your garden, and they'll just sign you in. We ask that you wear your gloves at all times when you're handling the tools, and just to maintain that 6-foot distance as much as you possibly can.
And there's also a question about if we want to plant spring veggies, do we put the seeds directly in the ground or grow them at home until May?
Okay, it depends on what you mean by spring veggies. If you're talking about lettuces and spinach and things like that, you can plant them in the ground right now, beets, those things. If you're talking about tomatoes, you're better off growing them at home until May.
Perfect. Are there any other questions that anyone has? We'll wait just a moment here to have people type them in. We want to thank everybody for coming, and thank you, Susan, for a lovely presentation today.
Oh, you are very welcome. And our garden staff is available to help with any kind of questions. And I don't know if there is a good book. You might want to ask Glenn out at Plant Fair Nursery, because he's the guru of knowing what's good for this area. So.
Perfect. It just looks like some nice thank yous.
And
And is there any last thing you want to add before I stop the recording, Susan?
nope, just have fun, come out and enjoy the garden. And when it gets as green as this picture shows, it makes you feel like everything you've done, all the hard work you've done, is for the good. So you
Oh,
guys go out and have a good time. I'll be at the garden probably in the next hour or so.
and April is asking, will there be a class next week? I think we are planning a class next week, and there'll be an email that goes out with the link to it. And we will plan on bringing it back through Zoom unless we find another platform that someone decides on. So everybody have a great week, and I'm going to stop the recording right now.
Okay.